What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I have another great exercise video for you. Today we're going to be running through 4 of my favorite exercises to help tone up and define your back. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first exercise we got up is going to be some T-bar rows. Now when it comes to setting up the T-bar row, what you're going to want to make sure that you've got is a landmine that you can put one end of the bar into. Now the reason that I'm such a big fan of the T-bar rows is it's going to be targeting your entire back. Not only is it going to help to grow and define your lats, your upper back, but also it's going to be working your lower back as well, as this acts as a stabilizer throughout the entire movement. Now when it comes to setting up the T-bar row, if you do have one of these landmine attachments that you can use, I definitely recommend using this, as you can adjust your grip to wherever you want to for when performing the exercise. If, however, you don't have access to one of them, you can use one of these close grip lat pull downs instead. All it's going to do is sit onto the bar like so, and then from here you're going to be able to perform the rows. The only reason that I would recommend that one over this one is simply because you can get better range of movement through the T-bar attachment. One last thing I recommend for when it comes to the setup is using smaller plates for setting up the weight when it comes to doing your T-bar rows. The reason being is when you use smaller plates, you can get a greater range of movement throughout the exercise. If you were to use the bigger plates, what tends to happen is it gets in the way of your chest and you can't get as much range of movement. Okay, so let's dive into the actual exercise now. When it comes to setting up the T-bar rows, the best thing to do is get yourself into a standing position first. So then from here, it's a little bit easier to get yourself into the right technique. From here, what you want to do is a soft bend in the knees, push your bum towards the back of the room and lean forward, okay? Then what we want to focus on is making sure that you can get a nice big rounded stretch through the upper back. If you're too close to the floor, you're not going to be able to get your arms out fully stretched, and we want to try and get as much of a stretch in that upper back as we can. So again, when we come into that position, shoulders back, chest nice and high, setting yourself up in the right position to start with. Hinge back through your hips, leaning forward. Keep that core nice and tight. Then from here, we can get a nice big stretch in that upper back. Then from here, think about driving your elbows backwards, squeezing your shoulder blades together. Nice slow stretch on the way down. Really allow that big stretch in that upper back. And then again, drive through the elbows, squeeze those shoulder blades back together. And then this is how you're going to perform the movement. Now, something you want to avoid doing during this exercise is a lot of people are round into this position here. Now, this usually stems from just trying to pick up and row. Like I said earlier, if you start from the top, it's a little bit easier to get into that position because you can hinge back and forward. Another mistake I see people making is just using their body to throw the weight up and down. This isn't what we want to do. This isn't going to really work your back as much as you want. You'll be much better at reducing the weight, focusing on using the lats and the upper back to squeeze the exercise, and then from here you can put a lot more focus into those muscles. Okay, so next up we have some single arm half kneeling lat pull downs. Now I'm always a big fan of including some single limb work in your training programs. The reason being is we always have that one dominant side that tends to take over. So when we do some single limb work, what we can do is help balance that out and allow that weaker side to do some work by itself. So the reason I'm a big fan of doing this exercise is 1, because it's single limb exercise, but 2, it lines up with your lat fibers nicely and allows to hit them as much as possible. Now, when it comes to the technique, what we want to make sure is that we're keeping our glutes squeezed as tight as we can. I see a lot of people sinking back into this position here. What we want to do is drive those glutes forward and open up those hips. You should almost feel a stretch through that rear hip flexor. From here, place your arm on the front of your leg to lock yourself in and create stability. And then you're going to drive through your elbow down towards your hip. Now, what you don't want to do is pull from your wrist into your shoulder. What this is going to do is overwork your bicep. We're trying to target those lats as much as possible. So what we need to do for that is we need to think about pushing that elbow down towards that hip. From here, my lats are fully contracted and shortened in this position. Then on the way up, I'm going to slowly resist that weight. I'm not going to let the weight pull me up and then I'm going to push down. I'm going to resist it and make sure that that tension stays in the lat throughout the entire movement. Now, another way that you can perform this exercise if you want to create further stability is by using a bench. So you can use that as a prop to support you. However, the reason I'm recommending doing this way is because we can also work some of the obliques in some stability exercise, but also we can help the mobility through the hips at the same time. The next exercise we got up is the traditional lat pull down. Now you may be wondering, why are we doing two lots of pull down exercises? But the difference is when we use this wider bar and this overhand grip, what we're going to end up doing is targeting some of your upper back as well as your lats. Whereas with that last lat exercise, what we've done is mainly isolated into the lats more. So when it comes to the setup of this lat pull down, firstly, make sure that you really lock your legs into the seat. I see a lot of people having their legs fairly loose and their bum slightly coming off every time that the weight comes up. We want to create as much stability in this exercise as possible, so really lock yourself in. Next, when it comes to that hand position, make sure that you're just slightly outside shoulder width. I see too many people trying to take it as wide as possible, and this just limits the range of movement we can get. When we're in this position here, what we can do, we can find that we can get our elbows nice and close to the body, shorten those lats as much as possible, and then we can get a great range of movement of a stretch above the head. Now, when it comes to getting the actual technique right, what we want to make sure is we're staying nice and tall at the bottom. What I see a lot of people doing is as they come down, is rounding through the shoulders and pulling into position. All we want to do is make sure that that body stays nice and still. So if you brace your core, lock it in nice and tight, keep your chest tall, then from here, think about pushing your elbows past your body down towards your hips. As you can see this way, my torso doesn't move at all. It's just my arms moving through the movement, which is then going to fully put all the strain onto the lats. Another thing I don't want to see you doing is rocking back and forward through the exercise like you're trying to row a boat. What you want to do is just make sure that, again, all the tension is in that upper back and it's a nice controlled movement through the entire exercise. This way, again, we can make sure that all that weight is going into the lats, not being thrown into the rest of the body trying to lift that weight. Okay, and the final exercise we're going to run through is a chest supported seated row. Now this exercise, what we're going to do is set it up so we can hit a little bit more of the rear delts during this exercise as well as the upper back. So to be able to do that, firstly, we need to make sure that we get the seat in the right height. To adjust the seat, there'll be some lever on the machine that we're just going to move up and down, okay? What we're looking for when we're set up in this seat position is when we pull back through the handles, our elbows are roughly 45 degrees down from our shoulders. This is going to put us in the optimal place to be able to target those rear delts in that upper back and minimize using the lats during this exercise. Now, next up, something that you guys might have the option to do with your machine is you should have like a puller or a lever here where you can adjust this chest pad. What you want to do is make sure that you pull it back as far as you can so you can just about reach these handles. The reason being is if you're too close to the machine, you're not going to be able to get much of a stretch in that upper back. We want to ensure that we can get a full range of movement. So that means a full stretch at the front and then a full retraction at the back. So just make sure that you set up this pad optimally to be able to do that as well. Now, for when it comes to getting into the movement, what we're going to do is take our hands on this overhand grip. Again, this is going to allow us to make sure that we don't use too much of the lats and we can target more of the upper back and rear delts. Next, like I said, we want to get that full stretch at the front, so allowing them shoulders to be pulled forward. Then I want you to think about driving your elbows out and around your body and keeping your chest nice and tall at the back of the exercise, okay? Nice and slow and controlled on the way forward to get that stretch. And then just make sure as you come back that you don't pull back and lean off of that pad. I see too many people trying to use that lower back to assist and make the exercise easier. So what we need to do is make sure that we keep ourselves against this pad, feet locked into the machine. And then from here again, as every back exercise, think about pushing the elbows back rather than pulling for the wrists. And then here we can get an optimal activation in the back rather than using the biceps. Another thing that I wanted to touch on is my thumbs. As you'll notice, I don't tend to have my thumbs in this position here. I tend to have them over the top. The reason being is it just gives your wrist a little bit more flexibility during the exercise. When you have that thumb underneath and locked in, your wrists feel a little bit more rigid. I just prefer this way. It just feels a little bit more comfortable and it allows me to really think about the exercise, driving through those elbows, contracting that upper back. And there you have it. There are 4 of my favorite exercises for targeting your back. We've gone through some different exercises that are going to target your lats, some are going to target your upper back, some a little bit more towards those rear delts. But overall, we're going to be able to target that entire back to give you the most definition possible. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure that you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell notification so you know when I bring the next video out, and I'll see you next time.